Hello, good evening, and a very warm welcome to the Hot Seat. In the Hot Seat today, in this ambience of corruption, is a public interest litigator, attorney at law, Naga Nanda Kodituako. Good evening, Mr. Kodituako.
Good evening, sir.
Mr. Kodituako is also a former customs officer, and perhaps in a unique position to have a real insight into some of the more better-known corrupt practices that goes on. You were actually in charge of the serious frauds investigation unit.
Yeah, it is called, that time it was called as serious frauds investigation, as revenue task force.
Oh, the RTF.
Yeah,
indeed.
yeah, RTF.
Yes. People who are importers generally fear the RTF, don't they?
Yeah, because it comes under Director General of Customs.
Right.
Functions directly under the Director General of Customs.
So once the RTF get hold of you, you've had it.
It depends. Now the situation is completely changed.
Okay. Okay. How important is this collection of import duties, the revenue, from the customs from the treasury perspective?
Yeah.
How important is that?
Yeah, because it contributes. There was a statement made by Ravi Karnanaik recently.
Yeah.
Customs contributes over 60 to 70%, between 60 to 70% of the revenue, government revenue, so something substantial.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's the single biggest revenue.
And the major portions, other than what you mean, the petroleum, comes from the motor vehicles.
I see.
Yeah.
Talking about motor vehicles, a good point. Why, Mr. Kodituako, is there a need, or is there a need, to give concessionary permits to parliamentarians? Some of these are duty-free permits to parliamentarians, or indeed for anybody. Why should anyone have a concessionary permit?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I must tell you, before J.R. Jayawardena was elected as the president in Sri Lanka, there was no such facility in this country. There was nothing called tax-free permits, nothing called these decentralized budgets. All these privileges came after that government. And prior to that, the vehicles were given to the public officers and parliamentarians and judges and all that. That is the official vehicles.
Yeah.
There was no such permit scheme was introduced. Originally, during that time, when this permit scheme was introduced for the first time, they were issued under strict conditions, subject to very strict conditions. That is, there are 4 or 5 conditions. Vehicle are imported under the permits, not allowed to be disposed of in any manner for a period of 5 years. That is, sale, mortgage, or in any manner. If anybody does it, then the vehicle is liable to be confiscated under the provisions of the customs ordinance.
Right.
So I remember during that time I was in the revenue task force.
Right.
And we seized number of vehicles available for sale in the car sales center, imported on this tax-free permits.
Yeah.
And I employed my officers, and a single day we seized 6 vehicles.
Right.
And that time these conditions were there.
Okay.
And all these vehicles were confiscated because it was liable to be confiscated, and there was a clear violation of the law.
Right.
I remember that time the Prime Minister was Ranil Wickremesinghe.
Okay.
And there was an order came from the Prime Minister to my boss that time, the Director General of Customs, to release all that vehicle. And I was summoned and I was told by the DGC that he had no other option. All these vehicles were released. And the media, and I still can remember, people asked a lot of questions from the customs. They said, customs officers may have been looked after by the trading community.
Yeah.
That's how they are not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
And that was not the case exactly.
No.
And I have the document here.
Right.
You can see that this is the Silumina newspaper.
Right.
Published on somewhere in 1993. That is the statement made by the Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe.
Okay.
The person who asked the Director General of Customs not to enforce law, make a public statement to the media, wherein he states that I have given very clear instructions to the Director General of Customs to enforce law strictly against the lawbreakers.
Right.
The Mr. Clean give a statement. That is to not to enforce the law.
Right.
That is, in practice, they do one thing, right? In public,
they say
another
nothing.
Yeah. But I must tell you,
Yeah.
now the tax on the motor vehicles
Yeah.
is, here you can see, this is the Schedule A of the customs law. Motor vehicles revenue, that is the tax element,
It's about
and percentage
300%.
is 300% on the diesel car. I think you are aware, I think you are British, I know that you
Yeah.
have a
Yeah.
UK citizenship as well like me.
Yeah.
There, tax element of the motor vehicle is 12%, 12.5%, 15%
It's
maximum.
very negligible.
So this is of course a penal tax.
Yeah.
So this encourage people to engage in fraudulent practices. What the government does from those days onwards, they issue permits. Whenever there is a market for the vehicles, some permit scheme will come into force.
Right.
Parliamentarians, tourism, even for Buddhist priests,
Yeah.
some way, few hundred vehicles, the permits will be issued. And then now, after some time, they withdrew all these conditions.
Right.
And permits holder was allowed to sell the vehicle no sooner it was imported. But I must tell you, minister cannot, the law require,
Yeah.
customs law, article 10, section 10 require recovery of tax on all commodities. And only in circumstances where there is a public interest involved.
Yeah.
In the public interest, minister can waive the customs duty under certain circumstances. That is purely in the public interest.
Right.
Here you will observe that is section 19A of the customs law.
Yeah.
And I can show you a document.
Yeah.
This refers to a motor vehicle. This is a Mitsubishi diesel, Jeep.
Yeah.
Here you can see, okay, the tax revenue, exemption of the tax revenue in this particular case is
8 million.
8 million.
Yeah.
And
And what is the what vehicle is that?
this is for Montero or something.
Oh,
Okay.
it's a Montero.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And out of this vehicle, this tax levy exemption, and you can see an agreement entered into between the dealer
Right.
and the permit holder.
Right.
Okay. And the
This is the sale of the permit.
Exactly. That means once I get a permit, I am allowed to sell. That is to defraud the revenue element.
Right.
So I give the permit and get 1/2 or share of it before the importation. That is the part of the revenue.
Right.
After the importation, other half is paid.
Okay.
And you will observe for a vehicle like Suzuki Maruti, can you see the revenue element? 1.4 million.
Yes, yeah.
So this is where you can see the poor man pay.
Yeah.
Big element. This is more than 150% of the value.
Yeah.
Even for a three-wheeler.
Yeah.
So more than the value is paid as a revenue.
Yeah.
And those who hold high public office, they are allowed to abuse permit, and they are also allowed to defraud the government revenue for unjust enrichment.
So this is actually a clear case of abuse of public.
Yeah, but Article 70 of the bribery law provides, if any public officer abuse public office to confer a benefit or favor to himself or another, it comes within the definition of offense, criminal offense, corruption. This is a clear offense of corruption, commission and offense of corruption.
And what can now I did a series of stories in the press in which we discovered that in the we can mention the name, in the Hidayat magazine, I noticed to my somewhat astonishment that all these foreign plated or foreign cars, foreign manufacturer, the high-end ones, they were all being sold at the same price. that is what caught my eye. So there was an advertisement for, say, Land Rover or BMW, whatever. They all said $35,000.
Okay.
So we got a plant to go in and get some paperwork and get it confirmed in writing. And lo and behold, they agreed and they gave us in writing. But it was astonishing. You see, some of these was like, say, Land Rover, and these were the up end, the Discovery model. They claim to be selling this for $35,000, whereas the real price would have been closer to $75,000.
Yeah.
And to add insult to injury, they actually transferred, because obviously, let's take the issue of the Discovery. You can't buy a brand new, fully loaded Discovery for $35,000.
Yeah.
It's more than that. And what they did is they sent the $35,000 to lawfully through the LC and so on. And so the question to ask really is, how did they pay the balance? Because we already know, if we go on the premise that you can't buy a Discovery at $35,000, then it follows therefore that you need to send around $20,000 more than that minimum.
Yeah.
We've never had an answer to that question, but that is, I suppose, it's a job of the exchange controller to find out how these monies went out, because there's no way that a brand new Discovery, even if it's stripped down of various little easily refittable parts, like the wing mirrors and so on, just to put the send to the customs officer off. There's no way that you can buy that at that amount of money. So it was very clear that the foreign exchange rules of this country had been apparently violated.
Yeah, clear violation.
And now in that system, where this has been done, but in the meantime the duties have paid and so on, and now we are in this new parliament and it's a new administration.
Yeah.
What happens to those vehicles? I understand that the customs have a ability to go backwards and do an audit.
Correct, yeah.
So when they do an audit and they find out that the incorrect duties have been paid and so on, what remedies or what action can the customs take?
Yeah, that's a provision in the customs law, that is to conduct a post audit.
Right.
That is to, the vehicle, the importer can clear the vehicle, but afterwards, the Director General of Customs is empowered under the law to do a further investigation, and if they can discover the actual transaction value which differs, and to recover the short levy. But I must tell you, but for the motor vehicles, it cannot be done right now, because all these commodities that, because Sri Lanka is in one of the member in the GATT valuation agreement, so World Trade Organization, and any commodity that the country imports, the tax has to be recovered on the transaction value. That has to be that is the primary source of valuation.
Right.
As I told you at the very beginning, since customs recover a substantial portion of revenue on motor vehicles, government decided, because there's a heavy undervaluation going on here. Actual transaction, if a person declare actual transaction value, I must emphasize that. If an importer declare actual transaction value for commodity in this country, he will be thrown out of the market, because he cannot compete.
I see.
Everybody does this, the undervaluation. So for this simple reason, the government decided to have its own valuation base for motor vehicles. And the GATT valuation agreement and the customs ordinance schedule E provides, article 10, the minister to maintain a minimum value for motor vehicle, for any commodity.
Right.
So under that, Mr. Ravi Karunanayake has issued a gazette notification to maintain, that is empowering the minister to maintain minimum value.
Right.
And it very clearly states once the minimum value for motor vehicle is determined by the Director General of Customs or the Minister, it says, their gazette says, duty shall be recovered on that minimum value.
On that note, we're going to take a short break and come right back to the hot seat. Do stay tuned. Hello, good evening, and welcome back to the hot seat, where we're joined by Mr. Nagananda Kodituaku, a public interest litigant. Activist is probably the better word. We were talking about the
maintaining of minimum value.
Maintaining the minimum value
for motor vehicle.
Let's say for motor vehicle.
Motor vehicle. Now, right now, this is one particular item taken out of the GATT valuation agreement.
Right.
That is to maintain minimum value for customs. Right. Unfortunately, I must say, the minimum value the Customs Department maintain, as you said before, it is observed, it is very much less than the actual valuation.
And when we mean the actual valuation, what do we mean by
as you know the Parker Car Guide, you know Auto Trader, so you will get the actual valuation there, actual transaction value. For example, that Land Rover Discovery Sports hybrid vehicle, you can't buy that vehicle brand new less than £100,000.
That's right.
How come the customs maintain a value of $60,000? It's impossible. Impossible unless there is a kind of a connivance.
Well, this is the other matter. The people who engage in these fraudulent activities are apparently ahead of the game.
Yes.
They are ahead of the authorities. For instance, in one particular instance, I have seen documents, but because it's subject of a police inquiry, I don't want to name more details, but I've seen it. We showed that this importer had brought in a particular vehicle and a particular model, and it had a value of $35,000. Now, if you went to the manufacturer's website and looked for that model, you wouldn't find that model. There is no such model. If you took out one little letter at the end of the model, the version, if you took one letter out and then typed it in, lo and behold, that model is there.
That particular letter is allocated for that particular model.
No, that letter is allocated to this particular transaction.
Okay.
I call it badge engineering, because that's what it is. The manufacturer, of course, doesn't play any role in this thing.
No, not at all.
But because markets such as ours are small markets, they tend to channel all this through one sort of principal agent who then handles smaller markets. Now, when that company, that agent, if you like, gives an invoice saying, this is the value, this is the transacted value, it's thousands and thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of dollars less than the actual value. How do the customs react to that? How should the customs react to that?
Yeah, it's a good point you raise. Now, as I told you, once any particular commodity taken out of the GATT valuation system, the penal sanctions provided by the customs law cannot be used against that particular item. For example, the motor vehicle.
Because it's not under that GATT.
Under the GATT. Now the minister has given a minimum valuation. So therefore, whatever the value declared by the importer is immaterial. So customs has minimum value is very clearly spelled out. The law very clearly states duty shall be recovered on the minimum value. So therefore, any gazette notification issued on the relying on that particular law, if it says otherwise, that means I know the right now. The minister's gazette say transaction value or minimum value, whichever is higher. You can't maintain that.
No.
That is against the law, because the gazette has to fall in line with the primary law. Primary law provides the minister to issue any gazette notification under that, which says the duty shall pay, the minister shall recover duty on the minimum value as determined by the DGC.
Right.
It does not give any room whatsoever for the minister to recover tax on either transaction value or the minimum value.
Whichever is higher.
Whichever is higher. Therefore, recently there was a serious allegation made against the finance minister Ravi Karunanayake.
Yeah.
And the Director General of Customs.
Yeah.
That there was a fraud running into some billions.
This is on the clearance of various.
This Hambantota Harbour, there were some vehicles. No, they said that the minister and the DGC was involved in a fraud.
Yes.
Which is
to find out more whether this was a fraud or not, join us back after this short commercial break. Good evening and welcome back to the Hot Seat. Mr. Kodituaku, was that a fraud in Hambantota?
I don't see any fraud because according to the provisions of law,
yeah.
What I say, as you correctly say,
yeah.
the transaction value declared by the importer was much lower.
Yeah.
It's a fact.
Yeah.
However, the law require the minister and the Director General of Customs to recover levies on the minimum value.
Right.
Therefore, even if the transaction value is more, the law does not allow the Director General of Customs or the minister to demand the importer to pay at a higher value, the real transaction value. Okay. If anybody challenge any of such cases.
But surely isn't the minimum value, isn't that exactly what it says, the minimum value?
That has to be the actual transaction value.
Okay. What happens if it's minimum value plus $1,000 more?
No. What I say,
yeah.
Minimum value shall be the actual value as determined by the manufacturer.
For the purposes of, okay.
Exactly. If the customs valuation...
Oh, I see. The minimum is as the manufacturer.
If for some reason, if customs maintain a lower value, then the Director
General...
What
happens in the case
where
clearly it is not manufacturer ABC who is giving this invoice, but it is manufacturer's authorized agent in some part of the world who is then giving an invoice to the importer in Sri Lanka at a much lesser amount, and the customs knows that the manufacturer is unable to sell at that, the value is much lower.
Okay.
What happens then?
Still, it is immaterial. As I told you, the importer's transaction value is immaterial.
So
once the minimum value, which has to be the actual transaction value, is determined by the DGC, then the customs can recover the actual
at that value.
Levy.
So
unfortunately, it is not the real value.
That is because the customs minimum value has been compromised.
Exactly, compromised.
So what we are saying, to get straight to the point, is that we need to ensure that the customs officers do their job diligently, without compromise.
Exactly. Now there was a
their principles.
There was a very serious allegation leveled against Mr. Anurag Kumar Disana, JVP.
Yeah.
He said the minister and the Director General of Customs was involved in a fraud.
Yeah.
And I challenge him. He made that statement in the Parliament. He said that these two individuals were involved in a fraud.
Yeah.
Now, as I told you, once the minimum value was determined by the DGC, the law does not provide Director General of Customs or the Minister to impose any penalty or impose any further forfeiture or whatever on the transaction value, because the customs is required by law to recover levies on the minimum value. So therefore, this allegation made by these individuals are absolutely baseless and unfounded. But the customs should do right now. What I say, they should get, now the word motor vehicle is taken out of the GATT valuation system. They should withdraw that gas certification. Go back to GATT and then invoke the penal sanctions as provided by the customs law against all undervaluations.
So it can be 3 times the amount. It can
that can be forfeiture of the vehicle, for the forfeiture imposed on the importer who is, nominally concerned in defrauding the revenue. This can be that. Unfortunately, that has not been rectified yet. Still, customs try to maintain this minimum value over the transaction value. That is the issue.
So that is the issue.
But
people, let's take it from the retail point of view. So a customer has bought this vehicle. He's gone into a dealer, and he's paid his money and he's bought the vehicle. But the customs post-audit department have now identified that vehicle as being one of these where the wrong duties have been paid and whatever.
Yeah.
What happens to the customer of the vehicle?
There's a difference of opinion in this area.
Right.
There are a number of case or court orders, decisions given by the Supreme Court.
Right.
And it's very clearly in the post-audit stage, if there's a revenue loss, only the revenue loss has to be recovered. That's what the law say. I remember there's a recent case, Toyota Lanka versus Director General of Customs. The court very clearly say if there is a payment of levy involved in that particular vehicle, and if there's a short recovery, then the court consider that as a short recovery, and that can be recovered under the customs law. That is what the law says. So a lot of people are allowed, and the law permits them to pay the short recovery, if any, and keep the vehicle.
I see. So they don't need to be alarmed that they will be losing the vehicle.
Yeah, but the importer is any case is liable. Then they,
right. So the customs have the ability to go to court.
Yeah, they can. But in order to do that, in the first place, the minister has to bring these vehicles under the GATT scheme, GATT valuation agreement. Right now, vehicles are not under the GATT valuation agreement.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. Mr. Nagananda Kodituaku, thank you very much for having been in the hot seat, and we look forward to welcoming you again on our network.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.